Golden leaves scattered across a deserted park. A German shepherd stood trembling beside the swings, whimpering into the wind. But when a little boy stepped forward, barefoot and unafraid, what happened next would silence the whole town. So, stay close. Because this story isn't just about a rescue, it's about a calling only one child could hear. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of faith, second chances, and the quiet miracles God still performs every day. The first snow of December fell quietly over Denver, laying a thin white skin across Sloan's Lake, and the old playground beside it. Streetlights hummed faintly through the fog, and the air tasted of cold metal and pine sap. Lauren Bennett gripped the steering wheel tighter as her little silver Subaru turned into the nearly empty parking lot. She was 32, tall and slim, with chestnut hair tied loosely behind her neck and pale skin that always seemed to blush in winter air. Her hands still bore faint lines of paint from her job at a local art supply store, proof that even after long days, she liked to tinker with colors before dinner. Life had made her gentle but cautious. 2 years earlier, she had lost her younger brother in a hiking accident, and since then, she had learned to see danger in ordinary beauty. The world could turn suddenly, she knew. From the back seat, Oliver's voice broke the hush. "Mom, can we stay just a minute? I like when the lake smells like snow." Oliver was 5, golden-haired and wide-eyed, a boy whose curiosity outweighed fears every time. His teachers called him the listener because he always seemed to hear things before anyone else did. The squeak of the janitor's mop, the hum of the vending machine, even birds before they landed. Lauren smiled in the rearview mirror. "Just a minute, sweetheart. It's freezing." She parked near the swings. The playground was abandoned, the kind of place that still held the ghost laughter of children. Wind stirred the rusty chains, making them creak like whispers. The sun was long gone, and the glow from the nearby city shimmered faintly on the lake's frozen surface. Lauren reached for the grocery bags beside her and sighed. Her husband Marcus would be home from his shift soon, tired as always. He worked long nights as a security technician, tall, strong-shouldered, with a few gray strands sneaking through his dark hair and a voice that could command a room. Years of dealing with emergencies had made him steady, maybe too steady, where Lauren still carried nerves in her chest. When she turned to unbuckle Oliver, she realized he wasn't humming anymore. He usually sang when he was happy, a mix of cartoon tunes and nonsense. Now his face had gone blank, his small hand hovering midair. "Mom," he said softly, "someone's crying." Lauren froze. "Crying? From where?" He pointed toward the lake, toward the shadowed playground. His little brow furrowed, and his voice trembled. "It's under the ice, or near it. It sounds hurt." She frowned, leaning forward, listening. Only wind, the creak of metal, and the dull slap of snow falling from branches. "There's no one, Ollie. Maybe the wind." He shook his head fiercely, blonde curls bouncing. "No, Mom. It's sad." His small hand went to the door handle before she could stop him. "Oliver, wait. It's slippery out," but his boots had already hit the ground, crunching through frost. Lauren cursed under her breath, shoved open her door, and followed. Cold air stung her lungs as she hurried toward him. "Come back, honey. It's too dark." Oliver stopped at the low metal fence separating the parking lot from the playground. His breath made little clouds. "It's here," he whispered, eyes fixed on the far end near the slide. "He's calling me." "He?" "Yeah, a dog." Lauren blinked. She hadn't heard a thing, but when she stepped closer, there it was, a faint, broken whimper carried by the wind. It was so soft she might have missed it, if not for her son's stillness. The sound made her stomach drop. It wasn't the sharp bark of a stray, but a long, low cry that trembled like someone in pain. "Oh my God," she murmured. "Stay behind me." She crossed the gate, the snow crunching under her boots. The playground looked eerie under the streetlight, every shadow sharpened by ice. The slide glistened like glass. Near its base, something moved, dark fur slicked to the ground, a shivering shape half buried in slush. Lauren lifted her phone's flashlight. The beam cut through the dusk, revealing a German shepherd, large but gaunt, his fur matted and wet. One paw was trapped between two bent steel grates leading to a drainage pipe. He trembled violently, ears flattened, eyes wide and liquid brown. The sight pulled a gasp from her throat. "Oh, sweetheart." Oliver tugged her coat. "Mom, he's hurt. We need to help him." She knelt, heart pounding. "Easy, boy. It's okay." She noticed his tag was missing, and his body bore thin scars along his ribs, old ones, healed poorly. Maybe he'd been abandoned or lost. His breath came in quick clouds. When she moved closer, he whined softly, a sound both fearful and pleading. Lauren bit her lip. She'd seen injured dogs lash out before. She needed something to lift the grate, but her hands were bare, and the metal was freezing. "Ollie, stay there. Don't move closer." But Oliver was already crouching, his mittened hand stretched out, palm up. "It's okay, buddy," he said in a tone so gentle that it startled her. "You can trust me." The dog's eyes flicked toward the boy, and something shifted. His trembling slowed. He didn't growl or snap. He just stared, as if remembering something long ago. Lauren's throat tightened. "He's freezing," she said softly. She took off her wool scarf and laid it under the dog's chest to block the ice. "It's okay. You're safe now." The dog let out a low rumble, almost like a sigh. Snowflakes melted on his muzzle. His paw was wedged badly. She could see where the metal pinched skin. It would bleed if she pulled wrong. Her mind raced. Should she call animal control? Her phone battery blinked red, 8%. "Mama," Oliver said suddenly, "his name's Coda." She blinked. "What?" "He told me." Lauren stared at her son, then back at the dog. "You heard that?" Oliver nodded. "He said, Coda, cold." A shiver ran up her spine. She couldn't explain how the boy knew, but when she whispered, "Okay, Coda," the dog lifted his head as if answering to the name. Lauren took a deep breath, her pulse steadying. "We'll get you out, Coda, I promise." She looked at her son. "Stay right there and keep talking to him." Oliver smiled, snowflakes clinging to his lashes. "Hey, Coda, Mom's gonna help. You're brave, right?" And for the first time, the dog's tail gave the faintest thump against the frozen ground. The wind howled louder across Sloan's Lake, and Lauren realized they weren't just saving a dog. They were standing at the edge of something much bigger, something that had waited for this exact moment of faith and courage beneath the ice. The morning after the rescue dawned dim and pale, the world outside Lauren's window muffled beneath a thick blanket of snow. The storm had not fully passed. Fine flakes drifted down in lazy spirals, glowing faintly in the amber light of street lamps. The silence was so deep, it seemed to press against the glass. Lauren stood by the kitchen counter, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee, gone cold. Her nerves had not settled. Every time she blinked, she saw the dog's eyes, dark, weary, pleading. She had left Coda at the animal shelter the night before, despite Oliver's tearful protest. The staff had promised to keep him safe, to check his leg, to find the owner. Still, something inside her refused to rest. Oliver padded into the kitchen in his dinosaur pajamas, curls flattened from sleep. "Is Coda coming home today?" he asked between yawns. His voice was soft, hopeful, and terribly certain. Lauren sighed. "Sweetheart, he's not ours. The shelter will take care of him. He might have a family looking for him." The boy frowned, his blue eyes clouding like the sky outside. "He said thank you," he whispered, almost to himself. "He said he would find us." Before she could answer, a knock came at the door, firm, measured, official. Lauren's heart skipped. She opened it to find a man standing in the snow, brushing flakes from his coat. "Morning, ma'am," he said. "Officer Caldwell, Denver PD." He was tall and broad, his frame filling the doorway. His uniform jacket stretched over muscled shoulders, and his face was weathered in a way that spoke of long years outdoors. Square jaw dusted with early stubble, short dark hair peppered with gray. His eyes were steady, gray-green like winter rain. There was something in his manner, professional but kind, that made Lauren straighten unconsciously. "I'm sorry to bother you," Caldwell continued, showing his badge. "We got a call from the animal shelter last night. You and your son brought in a German shepherd from Sloan's Lake." Lauren nodded. "Yes, his leg was stuck in a grate. We thought he might have been abandoned." Caldwell exhaled, steam rising from his breath. "That dog, Coda, right? We think he's a missing service animal. Belonged to a man named Eric Miller. Retired firefighter, lived near the west edge of the city. He went missing 2 weeks ago during the blizzard. We found his truck near the foothills, but no sign of him. The dog's ID tag was registered to him." Lauren's stomach tightened. "So, Coda, he's been alone that long?" The officer nodded grimly. "Most likely. Firefighters say Coda used to assist Eric with therapy work after an on-duty injury. Both were well known in their neighborhood. People called them inseparable." Behind her, Oliver tugged her sleeve. He wasn't crying because of his foot, the boy said. He was crying because he lost his person. Caldwell looked at him, brow raised. You've got quite the listener here. Lauren managed a thin smile. You have no idea. The officer took off his gloves, rubbing his palms together. Look, I just wanted to ask if you'd be willing to come down to the shelter later today. We'd like you and your son there when we introduce Coda to one of Eric's neighbors, a Ms. Whitman. She might help us confirm whether it's really him. Lauren agreed, though a quiet unease lingered. Something about this didn't feel finished. By noon, the snow had stopped, but clouds hung heavy as slate. The shelter sat near the edge of downtown, a squat brick building with fogged windows and a faded sign that read, Denver Animal Haven. Inside, the air was warm, tinged with antiseptic and the faint musk of wet fur. A woman waited near the front desk, a slender figure wrapped in a maroon coat. Her name was Clara Whitman, late 50s, her silver-streaked hair pinned neatly at the back of her neck. Her face had the delicate lines of someone who smiled more than she frowned, though that expression was absent now. Eric was my neighbor for 20 years, she said softly when Lauren introduced herself. After his accident, Coda never left his side. That dog used to carry his gloves to the truck every morning. Lauren nodded, moved by the warmth in her tone. I'm glad you came. They followed a young shelter worker down a narrow hall to a glass-doored kennel, and there he was, Coda, lying on a blanket, his injured leg bandaged neatly. The moment Oliver appeared, the dog's head lifted, eyes brightening, tail sweeping the floor in slow, heavy arcs. Hey, buddy, Lauren murmured, kneeling. The dog pressed his nose against the glass, whining softly. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my, she whispered. That's him. Eric's Coda, her voice cracked. But where's Eric? The shelter worker, Mia Tran, a petite woman in her 20s with short black hair and the calm, deliberate gestures of someone used to frightened animals, shifted uncomfortably. Search teams went out again this morning, she said. No updates yet. Coda pawed at the glass once, whining. Oliver stepped forward, placing his small hand where the paw had landed. The dog went still. The connection between them was instant, electric. He's saying he knows where to go, Oliver said quietly, his voice distant, as if he were repeating something whispered into his ear. He wants to show us. Lauren's breath caught. Ollie! But before she could speak again, Officer Caldwell appeared at the doorway. We just got word, he said, eyes sharp. Search team found tire tracks near Bear Creek Canyon. Same truck model, same plates as Eric's. They're sending a recovery unit now. He paused, glancing at the dog. You might have just given us our best lead. Lauren looked from the officer to her son, then to Coda, who now stood tall despite his bandaged leg, tail stiff with intent. Somewhere deep down, she felt it too, that this wasn't coincidence. The dog hadn't wandered to them by chance. He had come because he still had something to finish, and before the day ended, she knew she would follow wherever that path led. The road out of Denver curved through rising hills blanketed in white, where the pine trees bent under the weight of fresh snow. The late afternoon sun had already begun to fade, bleeding pale gold through low clouds. Lauren drove with both hands tight on the steering wheel, her breath fogging the air inside the car despite the heater's low hum. In the rearview mirror, she caught the reflection of Oliver's small face, pressed close to the window. Beside him, Coda sat upright, bandaged paw resting on the seat, his gaze fixed ahead as if he already knew their destination. Officer Caldwell's SUV led the way, its red taillights flashing faintly through the mist. The drive was quiet, except for the crunch of tires over ice. Every now and then, Lauren's thoughts tangled in circles. Why us? Why did the dog come to our car that night? She'd told herself it was coincidence, but deep down, she didn't believe in coincidences anymore, not since Daniel's accident. Bear Creek Canyon was a remote stretch of land southwest of the city, where forest met cliffs and winding rivers cut through frozen valleys. The snow there had been heavier than anywhere else during the storm. Caldwell had explained before they left that a search team had found tire tracks near an abandoned logging road, and that Coda might react if he recognized the scent. Lauren still wasn't sure what they were supposed to find, but Oliver's quiet certainty unnerved her in its calmness. He'll show us, the boy had said. Coda remembers. They reached a barricade near mile marker 17, where 2 patrol trucks idled. A uniformed ranger waved them through after Caldwell flashed his badge. The ranger, A young man with sunburned cheeks and a heavy parka nodded to Lauren's car. "Storm's rolling back in soon. You'll want to be quick." Caldwell stopped beside a snowbank and stepped out. Up close, his face looked even more weathered, stubble rough against his skin, the lines around his eyes deeper from years spent outdoors. "All right," he said, leaning toward Lauren's window. "This is as far as we can drive." The truck was spotted about a quarter-mile past that bend. "You and Oliver stay close." Lauren nodded, then glanced back. Coda was already alert, his ears pricked, nostrils flaring as he pressed his muzzle toward the half-open window. The dog gave a low sound, not a growl, but a deep exhale that felt deliberate. Oliver turned to her, voice small but steady. "He smells something." Caldwell opened the back door, letting Coda hop out carefully. The dog moved on 3 legs, limping slightly but with determination. Snow clung to his fur, and every breath left white ghosts in the air. The officer watched with quiet admiration. "Still strong," he murmured. "Service dogs, they don't quit easy." They followed the narrow trail deeper into the woods. The world narrowed to white and gray. The smell of pine, the crunch of boots, and the rhythmic huff of Coda's breath. Lauren's fingers itched from cold despite her gloves. She kept close to Oliver, whose hand was small and sure in hers. He didn't speak, but every so often he looked toward Coda like he was listening to something she couldn't hear. The wreck came into view at the next turn, a dark red pickup half buried in snow, its nose wedged against a tree trunk. One of the doors hung open, flapping weakly in the wind. Caldwell raised a hand for them to stop, moving forward cautiously. He crouched beside the truck, brushing snow off the license plate. "It's Eric's," he said under his breath. "Same number." Lauren felt her pulse quicken. "Do you think he's—" "Hard to say," the officer replied. "Tracks lead uphill. Could have gone looking for shelter." Coda whined suddenly, pawing at the snow near the driver's side. He sniffed, then barked once, a sharp, commanding sound that echoed through the trees. His tail wagged low and deliberate. Caldwell stood, frowning. "He's picking up a scent." Before anyone could stop him, Coda started moving toward the slope behind the truck. His gait was uneven but strong. Oliver tugged free from his mother's grasp and followed. "Mom, he wants us to come." "Oliver, wait!" Lauren's voice cracked through the wind, but the boy didn't stop. Coda had reached a cluster of trees where the snow was thinner. He began digging, front paw striking through the crust of ice with surprising force. Caldwell hurried over, motioning Lauren to stay back. "He's tracking," he said. "Let him work." Minutes passed. Coda kept digging, whimpering softly, until his paw hit something solid, cloth, frozen stiff. Caldwell dropped to his knees and brushed away snow. A gloved hand appeared, then a sleeve. Lauren gasped, covering her mouth. Beneath the frost lay a man, mid-50s, lean but strong, beard coated with ice, skin pale as the snow around him. His eyes were closed, lashes white. Caldwell pressed fingers to the man's neck, waiting, breath held. "There's a pulse," he said quickly. "Faint, but there." Lauren's knees buckled with relief. Oliver stood beside Coda, staring at the man's face. "That's him," the boy whispered. "That's Eric." Caldwell pulled out his radio, calling for medical support. His voice was clipped, efficient, the tone of a man who had seen enough rescues to know time mattered more than hope. "This is Unit 12. We've located the missing subject. Alive but hypothermic. Need medevac at Bear Creek North." Coda, meanwhile, had lain down beside Eric, resting his muzzle against the man's shoulder. His body trembled not from cold, but from something deeper, recognition, reunion, relief. His brown eyes glistened, and he let out a low sound, half whine, half sigh. Lauren knelt a few feet away, tears burning hot against the chill. She reached to stroke Coda's head, her fingers sinking into the coarse fur. "You did it, boy," she whispered. "You found him." Oliver smiled, small and certain. "He told me he would." When the helicopter blades finally cut through the sky 20 minutes later, the snow began to fall again, thicker, softer, as if the world itself exhaled. And as the medics lifted Eric's body onto the stretcher, Coda refused to move until the man's gloved hand brushed his fur one last time. Only then did the dog rise, tail swaying weakly, eyes following the stretcher until it disappeared into the snowstorm. Lauren stood in silence, her son's small hand in hers. She knew this wasn't the end of their story, but tonight, Amid the howl of wind and the steady rhythm of helicopter blades fading into the mountains, she finally believed in miracles again. The hospital in Evergreen was small, tucked between the pines like it wanted to stay hidden from the cold. Snow still drifted past its wide windows, melting on the glass before it could settle. Lauren sat in the waiting room, with Oliver asleep in her lap, his head heavy against her coat. Coda lay stretched at her feet, his bandaged paw resting gently on the tile, his chest rising and falling in calm rhythm. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee, the quiet hum of fluorescent lights filling the spaces between heartbeats. Through the double doors, nurses moved with practiced purpose, and among them stood Dr. Amelia Rhodes, the lead physician on call. She was in her early 40s, with sharp, intelligent eyes behind square glasses and dark curls tied in a loose bun that escaped in wisps around her face. Her lab coat was crisp, sleeves rolled neatly to the elbows, and her voice carried the calm authority of someone who had seen too many emergencies and learned not to flinch. She had a reputation in Evergreen for saving people the mountains tried to keep. When she approached, Lauren straightened, trying to read the doctor's expression. "He's alive," Dr. Rhodes began softly. "We stabilized his temperature and rehydrated him. Frostbite on both hands, mild concussion, but he's strong, stronger than most men half his age." Lauren let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Can we see him?" The doctor smiled faintly. "He's conscious now, though still confused. Just a few minutes, please." Lauren woke Oliver gently. The boy blinked sleepily, then looked at Coda, who was already standing, tail low but wagging. "He knows," Oliver said with quiet certainty. Inside the recovery room, the beeping of monitors mixed with the muffled hum of the storm outside. Eric Miller lay propped against white pillows, his beard trimmed by hospital care, skin still pale but warm with returning life. His eyes, gray with a faint hint of green, opened when he heard the door. Coda moved first. He limped to the bedside, whining softly. The moment Eric's gaze met his hand lifted weakly, trembling as it touched the dog's fur. His voice cracked like dry wood. "You came back, boy." The dog pressed closer, nose buried against Eric's chest, tail thumping softly against the sheets. Lauren felt her throat tighten. Eric looked up at her, and the child beside her. "You're the one who found him," he said, his tone roughened by both gratitude and exhaustion. Lauren nodded. "It was Oliver, really. He heard him first." The old firefighter studied the boy, something kind sparking behind tired eyes. "Then I owe you, little man." Oliver smiled shyly, his fingers gripping his mother's hand. "You don't owe me." He told me where to go. Dr. Rhodes, who had remained near the door, watched this exchange with quiet interest. She had seen grief and relief often in her work, but rarely something that felt so unspoken, almost spiritual. Eric sighed, closing his eyes for a moment. "I shouldn't have gone up there alone," he murmured. "After the snow hit, I tried to head back to town, but the truck slid. I must have hit my head. Woke up once or twice, thought I saw him running in the distance. Guess he was looking for help." "He was," Lauren said softly. "He found us at the lake." Eric smiled faintly. "Smart dog, always was." Coda lifted his head at that, as if proud. Caldwell entered then, brushing melting snow off his coat. His voice was steady but held the ease of relief. "You just made a lot of people's day, Eric. Search team thought we'd never find you alive." Eric gave a small chuckle. "Guess the mountain didn't want me yet." Caldwell moved closer, his boots squeaking against the tile. "We'll have you move down to Denver for observation, but for now, you're safe." He glanced at Coda. "And he's got a warm bed waiting at the station tonight." Eric's expression shifted, serious now. "He goes where I go." Dr. Rhodes crossed her arms, a faint smile tugging her lips. "Then I'll see about making that work. Therapy animals are easier to keep nearby than officers." Lauren couldn't help but laugh softly, the tension easing for the first time in days. The storm had taken much, but somehow it had given back something else. Connection. Oliver looked around the sterile room, his small hand still in hers. "Mom," he said, "can we visit them again?" Lauren nodded. "We will." Caldwell checked his watch. "You should get the boy home. Roads are icing up again." He paused, looking at her with a half smile. "You did good out there, Lauren. Not many people would have stopped that night." She looked down at Coda, who had settled again beside Eric's bed, head resting on the man's knee. "I think he was the one who stopped us." Later, when they finally left, the sky had cleared. The moon hung low, glinting off the snow like silver glass. As Lauren carried Oliver to the car, she caught sight of Coda through the hospital window, still watching them, his eyes calm, unblinking. That night, long after they reached home, Lauren stood at the window, unable to sleep. The snow had stopped falling, but her thoughts didn't. Something about that connection, the way Oliver seemed to understand the dog, the way fate had looped them together, felt unfinished, like a story still writing itself in the dark. Miles away, in his hospital bed, Eric stirred in half-sleep. His hand rested on Coda's fur. He dreamed of firelight, of smoke, of the day he pulled a child from a burning house 15 years ago, a child with golden curls and blue eyes, the same as the boy who had found him now. When he woke, a single tear had frozen at the corner of his eye. Outside, the mountains stood silent, holding their secrets in the snow. 3 weeks passed before the mountains began to thaw. The snow that had once sealed roads and windows now softened into glittering streams, and the air of evergreen carried the scent of pine and wet earth. Lauren stood outside her home that morning, coffee steaming in her hand, watching Oliver chase Coda across the yard. The boy's laughter rang clear against the last breath of winter, and the dog, now fully healed, bounded after him with renewed strength. The bandage was gone, replaced by a faint scar, but his energy had returned, the same loyal gleam in his eyes that once led them through snow and darkness. Since the rescue, life had begun to return to something resembling ordinary. Yet Lauren often caught herself drifting, thinking of Eric Miller in his hospital bed, the way he had looked at Oliver like recognition had sparked behind his tired gaze. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to that look, that somewhere, fate had stitched their lives together long before the night at Sloan's Lake. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. When she opened it, Officer Caldwell stood there again, his uniform pressed, his hair combed back neatly despite the wind. His eyes, usually guarded, softened when he smiled. "Mind if I come in?" Lauren stepped aside. "Of course. Everything okay?" He nodded, stepping into the warmth. "Better than okay. Eric's being released from the rehab center today. He asked if he could stop by. Said he's got something to tell you." A flutter of unease mixed with curiosity rippled through her. "He's coming here?" "Wouldn't miss it," Caldwell said. "He's a stubborn man, but a grateful one." A few hours later, an old blue pickup rolled into her driveway. Eric stepped out slowly, wrapped in a thick jacket. His beard had been neatly trimmed, though it still bore streaks of gray, and he walked with a slight limp. He looked stronger, but there was a humility in his eyes, a quiet awareness of how close he had come to vanishing. Coda barked once, then sprinted toward him, tail whipping the air. Eric laughed, dropping to one knee despite the snow still clinging to the ground. "Easy, boy," he said, rubbing the dog's neck. "Didn't think I'd see you running again so soon." Oliver ran to join them, his small arms wrapping around Coda's back. "He missed you," he said. Eric smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. "And I missed him. But I think he missed you too." He looked up at Lauren, who stood on the porch with a soft, guarded expression. "Would you like some coffee?" she asked, her voice gentle. He accepted, and soon they sat at the kitchen table. The room smelled of cinnamon and warmth. Caldwell lingered by the door, sipping from a paper cup, letting them talk. Eric placed a small photograph on the table, a worn image of himself in his 20s, uniformed, standing in front of a fire truck with a boy no older than 5 perched on his shoulders. The boy's hair was golden, his smile wide. "That was in 2008, Eric said quietly. "There was a fire in an apartment building on the east side. A gas line had blown. We pulled out a mother and her son. She didn't make it, but the boy did. I tried to keep in touch with the family that took him in after, but life moved fast. The adoption records were sealed later on." Lauren's fingers trembled as she touched the photo. The child in the picture had eyes too familiar, blue as thawing ice, framed by the same light hair that fell across her own son's forehead every morning. "You're saying—" Eric nodded slowly. "I can't be sure without the records, but when I saw him in that hospital room, it felt like the world stopped. His laugh, his eyes. It's him." He turned to Oliver. "You were the boy I saved from that fire, weren't you?" Oliver tilted his head, his expression curious but calm. "Maybe," he said softly. "But maybe you were the man who was supposed to find us again." The words hung in the air like prayer. Lauren blinked back tears, not from shock, but from the deep, aching sense of rightness. She had adopted Oliver when he was barely a year old, never knowing the full story of where he came from. The file had said, "Fire rescue infant, no surviving kin." And now the circle had closed, years later, drawn together by snow, loss, and a dog who had refused to give up. Caldwell cleared his throat quietly, sensing the intimacy of the moment. "Guess the mountains wanted to return something they'd taken," he murmured. Eric reached across the table, his hand rough and steady. "Thank you, Lauren, for saving him again, for saving me." Lauren squeezed his hand in silence. Coda, who had been lying between them, lifted his head and rested it on both their knees, eyes half closed, content. As the day faded, they all stepped outside. The air was clear, the snow melting into tiny rivers that sparkled under the waning light. Oliver threw a stick, and Coda dashed after it, his shadow long against the ground. For a moment, everything was simple. The sound of laughter, the smell of pine, the faint hum of the world healing itself. Eric watched them, hands tucked into his jacket. "You know," he said, glancing at Caldwell, "I always thought I was saving lives out there. Turns out, maybe they were saving mine." Caldwell smiled faintly. "That's usually how it works." Lauren looked at the horizon where the last light clung to the mountains. "Maybe we all just find our way back when the world's ready," she said. And as Coda bounded back toward them, snow scattering beneath his paws, it felt true that sometimes even winter remembers who it owes. Final message. When the snow remembered. Sometimes God works through storms, not to break us, but to bring us where we were meant to be. Lauren, Oliver, Eric, and Coda were never strangers in his plan. They were threads waiting to be woven together by grace. The snow, which once blinded and buried, became the very road that carried them toward reunion, forgiveness, and faith. Life often feels like that same winter, cold, uncertain, lonely. But miracles do not always arrive in flashes of light. Sometimes they come quietly, through the bark of a lost dog, the hand of a stranger, or the courage of a child who still believes in something greater. When you face your own season of storms, remember this: God's timing is never late. His hand may not remove the cold, but it will always guide you toward warmth. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that faith still moves mountains. Leave a comment about your own miracle. Subscribe for more stories of hope between humans and the creatures God sends our way. And may His grace watch over you and everyone you love. May God bless all who listen, and may He keep lighting your path, even when it's covered in snow.